blown away that it's doing this on this road anyway. This is a 2-lane road out in the middle of the country outside of Atlanta. And SuperCruise is just taking care of business here. Oh, the kind of stuff that goes on here is so funny. Pothole, watch this. Very nice. So this week we're driving the all-new Chevy Traverse, and Chevy came down to, well, Atlanta actually. We're just southwest of Atlanta on the first drive event for the Chevy Traverse, and right away I can tell you unequivocally that this Chevy Traverse is best in class in, well, 2 really important ways, and there's one kind of big negative. So stick around and let's find out what it is. All right, first off, we have to talk about the styling of the new Chevy Traverse. We haven't had it yet. We only saw it at an auto show, and this is the RS trim. So in the RS trim, well, first of all, you get this gorgeous red paint and these 22-inch black wheels. So the RS trim looks absolutely fantastic, but for the first time ever, the Chevy Traverse now comes in a Z71 trim. So I'll show you kind of both trims in B-roll. You can see this one RS behind me, and you can see the Z71 in some of the B-roll. And I think this thing looks fantastic. I love the way they kind of squared off the front end to make it look more like a Tahoe. And then the back end, they sort of did the same thing, but they gave it Chevy's kind of like boomerang design taillights. I think this thing looks excellent. And the way the kind of C-pillar kind of kicks up there with that like little black accent, I think they did a phenomenal job restyling this, especially the Z51, which gets the red tow hooks. And the thing about the Z51 is they didn't just go with style. And as you can see in the like B-roll where they kind of squared off the front end, they also took a little bit out of the bumper and they gave it the red tow hooks for a little bit of increased approach angle, just a little bit, but it's actually functional. There's functionality to that Z71 look. So I really appreciate the fact that, well, if we're being honest, the original Chevy Traverse looked a lot like a potato. Like it was not an attractive vehicle in the slightest. When Megan and I bought our 2012 Suburban back in 2012, we looked at the Traverse because interior room-wise, it actually had more interior space than the current Tahoe of that generation. And Megan was like, no way, I will not drive this car. It's hideous. And I don't disagree. The first gen Traverse was not a particularly good looking vehicle, but this one is massively improved and it looks so much better. I didn't think the last gen was like that good or bad, but this one, it blows both of them out of the water. Now, I told you at the beginning that there was a negative, so let's go ahead and address the negative first. And I know that I'm standing here with the hood open on the Chevy Traverse, and you're probably thinking, I know what the negative is. It's the fact that it has a 2.5 liter turbo 4-cylinder, making 328 horsepower, 326 pound-feet of torque, running through an 8-speed automatic, and hitting the ground via all-wheel drive in many of the model trims. Now, the Z71 gets a twin clutch that can torque vector and stuff like that. I believe the RS just has sort of regular all-wheel drive, but that's not what the negative is. See, you thought I was going to say it's because it has a turbo 4, and it really isn't a negative. Compared to the old V6, the turbo 4 isn't all that bad. In fact, it makes noticeably more power, noticeably more torque. It comes on at lower RPM, so it gives you more responsiveness. It's not the fact that it has a turbo 4. It's the sound that the turbo 4 makes. It sounds awful. It sounds awful. Nothing about the drive experience, which is what we're gonna get to next, and I'll give you a big hint. One of the best-in-class positives is in the drive experience. So wait for that, because I know I'm gonna be harsh about the sound of this, but I'm gonna gush about the drive experience. So that's coming up in a second. It's the sound of this thing. Like, it's a perfectly fine powertrain. There's nothing wrong with this powertrain from an objective standpoint. In fact, I would say From a drivability standpoint, this powertrain is pretty great. There's a lot to like about this powertrain. But the sound it makes, especially under load when you're accelerating quickly, and we had the opportunity to drive it in all sorts of environments, you're gonna see that. And when you like get into it, or when you're just in stop and go, or when it just doesn't sound good. So please, Chevy, go back to the drawing board on that one. I don't know, put a freaking fart can exhaust on it from a Civic. I'm kidding, seriously, don't do that. But like, do something about the sound that this thing makes, because the overall vehicle and the overall drive experience is so freaking good. And they did some enhancements to the engine to improve cooling, to improve responsiveness, to improve the auto start stop system, which is almost imperceptible. Like, there are some really nice refinements to this engine, like seriously, okay? But it just sounds so bad when you're actually driving it, and that's the thing that most consumers are going to be kind of living with on a day-to-day basis, okay? So I just want to point that out, because I am going to now, in the next 10 seconds, effusively praise the driving experience of the Chevy Traverse. But I wanted to be 100% honest with you, because Megan and I always are on this channel, which, by the way, she actually had to work. You know, we both work in a school. We can't both take the day off. So she's working. We'll get her thoughts when we get a press vehicle. But I wanted to point that out because we kind of pride ourselves on being 100% honest and transparent. But because we're 100% honest and transparent, I'm gonna jump into this thing and I'm gonna talk about how the Z71 and the RS models drive.
All right, taking the new Chevy Traverse. This is the Z71 trim, and we're taking it on an off-road course, and I use that term loosely. We're in mostly the kind of off-roading that you would expect your average Chevy Traverse driver to do. So as you can probably see out the window, and I'll try to get some B-roll of the driving. We're at Foxhall Resort south of Atlanta. And so this is going to be a mixture of kind of loose gravel, grass, fields, dirt, stuff like that. This is not a Toyota TRD Pro type of situation. We're not rock crawling and anything like that. And I think if you sort of come into this with the perception that that's what you would be doing in something like a Chevy Traverse, I mean, that's kind of silly, right? Like, this is a family SUV meant to carry a lot of people. And so here at Foxhall, you can see we have a lot of like fields, open fields, small hills, waterways and stuff like that. That's actually like the actual water, rivers and creeks. We're not going to go diving into that. We're on a pre-made course that Chevy has provided us. And so there's actually some wildlife around. There's some Canadian geese and a what appears to be a cattle egret hanging out over here with the Canadian geese. You didn't know you were going to get planet Earth, but that's what you got here on the drive portion. But what we're really looking at is the Z71 trim with its extra 1.2 inches of ground clearance and the skid plates and stuff like that. The Chevy reps made it, they were very adamant that this is not just a trim, it's not just a badge, that they want this to be like meaningful, right? Like, it actually has additional capability. So we've got that extra ground clearance, and we've got those extra skid plates, and we've got the twin clutch all-wheel drive system. And they said that there will be some opportunities here for us to put that into practice. So you can kind of see here in this part, it's like a rutted field. And I would say they told us to keep it below 40 miles an hour, which I think is kind of funny, because I don't think I'd really want to drive more than 40 miles an hour over this type of terrain. Not really at all. Like, this is, you know, probably get some significant bouncing. Let's take it up a little bit, go up to about like, I'm going about 25, 30 miles an hour. What's really kind of impressive right now in the Z71, I know you're like, this is not crazy off-roading, but I'm kind of intentionally hitting some of these potholes and stuff, and the suspension, the comfort in the suspension is very impressive. The body control is very impressive. That's the first thing that I'm noticing right now, is the body control. This has uniquely tuned ZF dampers that are sort of specific to the RS and the Z71 trims. And in the Z71 trim, they're sort of tuned specifically for off-road. They also said it has hydraulic bump stops so that if you do hit something harsh, you don't get like a jarring impact. It sort of takes the edge off. But this is kind of impressive, like what we're doing here in terms of like body control. I don't know if it's translating on camera as much, the sort of ruts and dips that you have in this grass field, but they're not insignificant. Like, they are present. Now we're on the sort of more typical dirt path. This is kind of the dirt path that you would expect here, that you would drive a soft roader on. Z71's trying not to be a soft roader, it's trying to be more of an off-roader than this. All right, so now we're going up into more of, here in Georgia, what you would expect to see in kind of like the North Georgia mountains, the kind of hilly, gravel, rutted road. And this is meant to sort of give us an idea of what the Z71 equipped Traverse can do with its various terrain modes. This gravel is pretty loose, actually. I can feel it shifting around under the car. I can feel the all-wheel drive system kind of transferring grip from wheel to wheel. And it's got some decent little moguls here. And we have a terrain mode as well in the Z71 equipped Traverse. We can change it over to terrain mode. We can also select the terrain mode that allows you, it's almost like kind of like a fake low range, right? It limits your speed and it gives you a little bit more precise control, they said. So it kind of gives you like a maximum speed. It's not crawl control necessarily. It's somewhere in between like a low range stand-in and crawl control, which is kind of cool. I mean, honestly, to have something like that in a vehicle like this is nice. It's a good addition. It just gives you a little bit more of that extra control off-road. And these are, I can say this as a Atlanta native, these are not unlike the types of roads that you would find in the North Georgia mountains, where you have maybe a mixture of old pavement or no pavement, significant amount of gravel. Some of these inclines are like kind of decent. I know they don't always translate well on camera, but like this is a very typical North Georgia environment, even though we're technically south of Atlanta. But this is very similar to what you'd find in the mountains here. I still think what impresses me the most is I'm kind of trying to pick out some of these little ruts to just see. One thing that always bothers me on family SUVs like this is when you have one that rocks side to side and you get head tossed, you know, where your kind of head's like a bobblehead doll. And off-road here, this Z71 equipped Chevy Traverse is doing a very commendable job of limiting that, ironing most of it out. We're on these kind of access roads. You can maybe see out the window campsites, like these are like the campsites on the property here at Foxhall. And so they're meant to be accessed by, you know, trucks and more off-road Jeepy type things, Subarus and whatnot, and not a very large 3-row crossover. We're not really having any trouble navigating through here. There goes a hawk, red-shouldered hawk. This is weird that we're getting this kind of Audubon Society tour. I was not intending that. I'm not gonna lie, you are aware of the Chevy Traverse's size. This is still quite a large SUV, and we'll talk about it more, but it is the largest in the class. So navigating through some of these areas is a little tricky. You can see here these trees that are marked with many cones, so you don't whack one of these things against the tree. However, I can turn on my surround view camera. Check this out. So I can enable my surround view camera with the button, and it will allow me to drive with the surround view camera turned on. So in this situation right here, let's see if we can kind of keep an eye on the camera and what's going on the car. I can pick my way forward. You see that right there? And avoid that tree. I was very close to that tree and through that obstacle with no trouble at all. And the surround view camera is still on as I drive through. And that is so nice to have. I mean, this isn't even an off-road vehicle. And yet it's allowing me the option of keeping the surround view camera on while I'm going through some of these narrow passageways. Like I said, probably not intended for a vehicle of this size. And thanks to the view out the camera here, the forward-facing view, I can pick my way up and down stuff, even though the front end of this thing, I'm not gonna lie, the front end of the Traverse is large. It is a, my old English teacher self would say, a prodigious front end. It is quite massive. And I mean, it's squared off. I can assume where it is, but being a crossover, you have more of a front overhang than you would on a more traditional SUV. So I don't want to find out the hard way that I was wrong. So running this camera allows me to have a little bit more confidence in where the front end is and not feel like, I'm in danger of messing it up. And see, now that I'm kind of through that section and I'm on this sort of half paved road, I can relax a little bit and the camera is still on. So very, very nice feature there that you can access that surround view camera. This body control is great. I'm going over these potholes on purpose right here. I'm just like hitting here's a big one. I mean, for an off-road, slightly raised crossover, that's exceptional body control. Another thing that, as we kind of come back around to civilization again, another thing that I would point out is that the engine power, so this is the Turbo 4, so it means you got 326 pound-feet of torque. The engine power, like, it didn't even really feel like it was being taxed, like, at all. It was not struggling to maintain speed. It didn't even sound like it was working hard. I think that's pretty interesting, considering that this thing had a decent sized V6 in it in the previous generation that was noticeably less powerful, and now you have this Turbo 4 that is motivating this pretty big 3-row crossover, and it doesn't even seem to be stress. Like, it's not even working that hard. And the fact that you can get all that and still get over 20 miles per gallon average, that's impressive. I mean, I really like the control and capability of this. I think these sort of slightly more capable crossover style SUVs fit way more people's lifestyle than the big body on frame things or dedicated off-roaders. I mean, look, Broncos are cool, Jeep Wranglers are cool, but like, this is something that, I mean, our girls are older. We don't necessarily need a vehicle this size, but we could have gotten one of these and like literally can do anything that you wanted to do. I can't say it enough. I'm really impressed with the ride of this thing over this terrain. I think I'm predicting that is going to be in the on-road portion that's going to stand out. If this thing rides as well on-road as it does in these sort of off-road, again, realistic off-road environments, then I think this is going to be a pretty darn successful crossover vehicle. The fact that you can be this comfortable driving over, I mean, look, there's roads around Atlanta. I don't know where you guys live, but there's roads around Atlanta where the pavement is as bad as this gravel road we're on right now, and this thing is nonplussed. It is not even, it's translating so little of that through to me by the seat of the pants and from head toss. You can kind of see we're coming out of the woods here. Are we out of the woods yet? Are we out of the woods yet? Taylor Swift reference? I know, I'm sorry, teenage daughters. Did I go the wrong way? Maybe I went the wrong way. Am I going the right way?
Yes, you're going the right way.
Okay, just checking.
We're going the wrong way.
Oh, okay. I was like, I saw you.
You go down that way.
I go that way?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Alex on autos. Going the wrong way around the drive loop. Hey, Alex. Oh, the kind of stuff that goes on here is so funny. Pothole, watch this. Very nice. Yeah, so America, this is going to take care of most of your SUV needs. I mean, driving around gravel roads and a resort property, I think is like way more realistic of a vehicle challenge than, you know, what you do in Broncos and TRD Pros and stuff like that. I mean, not that those aren't cool. I'm just being real. I'm going to turn off my phone camera before I get back to the start so they're not like, you were driving with your phone in your hands? So now we're taking the Chevy Traverse with the Z71 package.
Make a slight left onto Basket Creek Road.
On the on-road loop. And this is running the integrated Google Maps because this runs on Android now. So you got all Google integration. Don't worry, it still has CarPlay. Now, one of the nice things about having the Google integration here on the 17.7-inch infotainment display, which that's phenomenal, is that we not only have the giant Google map here,
7 miles.
but we also have turn-by-turn directions right in the gauge cluster, right next to the speedometer and tach. So that's kind of a nice thing to have, is that you've got your Google Maps integrated along with your other Google apps, but then you also have that turn-by-turn navigation. And so I don't even have to like really take my eyes off the instrument cluster. I can just focus straight ahead, or I can look over here at the infotainment. That's just a cool thing about integrating that technology together. And so this gives us a chance to kind of take these out on the road and see how they drive. Right off the bat, the ride is very comfortable. It's a very comfortable ride. Body control, like I said, on the trails is great. Body control on the road is fantastic. Now, I haven't fully gotten the seat and the steering wheel and everything exactly the way that I would have it. And so, you know, I can mess around with that a little bit more. I don't want to mess up too much for the other media people here, because not everybody is almost 6'6". But out here on the road, we're on long kind of country roads outside of Atlanta. So it gives you an idea of, you know, what type of driving environment we're dealing with here. I don't think we're going all the way out to the highway, so we're not going to go to the interstate, but we're on these sort of like long, straight country roads. Good pavement, in case you're wondering, kind of give you an idea of, you know, the conditions. And this thing rides very comfortably. It's moving a little bit more out here on the road with sort of the undulations of the pavement, but definitely not any different than most of its competitors would be. Not anything that I can think of in this category. So you probably want to know about SuperCruise. I just enabled SuperCruise, which has its own little unique icon here on the steering wheel. And let me reiterate something I said. We are on sort of straight country 2-lane roads outside of Atlanta. Like, this is like a highway, but it's like a 2-lane road. And I hit the SuperCruise button, it instantly came on, and it is tracking. I mean, this is impressive. This is really impressive on this like 2-lane road. And it's just driving the car. It didn't even like hardly prompt me. I just hit the button and it was like, yeah, I know this road, boom, and it's on. And I got my green light on the steering wheel, and it's holding. I'm at about 5 over the speed limit right now, and it's just chilling. Just holding it and not even, I mean, this is, wow. And I mean, to compare, okay, and let me make a point of comparison here. Hold up, I want to see, there's a road intersecting on the right. Didn't phase it. That's got to be one of the people here. There's a Hummer EV just passed us going the other way. So what, in case you're wondering, what I was curious about is there was a road that intersected the highway here, and it had one of those like kind of white dotted lines, right, where it intersected the highway. I wanted to see how SuperCruise would react. Interestingly, so just a second ago there, SuperCruise disengaged, and it gave me a warning on the dash as well as a little seat vibration warning. And I'm guessing it's because the right-hand line, even though this is pre-mapped and everything, the right-hand line over here on the shoulder didn't look good. It was like the pavement was all worn away and stuff. So I'm guessing it had something to do with the inability for it to see that right-hand line. Now, honestly, that doesn't faze me. That doesn't bother me because I'm blown away that it's doing this on this road anyway. This is a 2-lane road out in the middle of the country outside of Atlanta, and SuperCruise is just taking care of business here, and I'm not even having to like worry about it. I mean, I'm really impressed right now. I'm kind of just watching it to see what it's going to do as we kind of go around this gentle curve. And not only is it having no trouble with the road, it's not making too many adjustments. Like here we are on like a long straightaway where some lesser systems and a lot of adaptive cruise control and stuff systems have gotten better about this, but sometimes they would kind of slowly ping pong between the lines on a straightaway. Here we've got the right hand shoulder white line here and the passing hashed yellow line in the middle, and SuperCruise is tracking dead straight right now. This is dead straight down the road. So I'm very impressed, and also I'm finding it very easy to trust SuperCruise in this situation because it's doing such a good job.
In half a mile, turn left onto Copper Mill Road.
Over this bridge, the lines are all jaggedy, like whoever paved them or whoever painted them was not paying attention, and it still is engaged. I'm gonna turn it off here real quick so we can make this turn. Oh, and when I did that, okay, so I just stepped on the brake pedal to disengage, and it still gave me the visual and vibration warning, which is interesting. I like that. Just so it's like, are you sure this is what you're doing? Now, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say, I highly doubt SuperCruise has this road map. This is just a straight up surface road with a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. So let's focus more on the driving characteristics of the Chevy Traverse in Z71 trim, because we're entering what appears to be a park. I know I'm from Atlanta, but like I don't live down here. So going over some speed bumps. The suspension tuning on this thing is very impressive. I know that the Z71 and the RS ride on specific ZF dampers, and like I said, they have their own unique tuning, right?
Is on the left.
Okay, it's just taking me through this park. So they have their own unique tuning for their different respective missions. I'm also not finding it too hard to hit the continue button on Google Maps because of the 17-inch infotainment screen. It's massive, so it makes it very easy to hit. Your climate controls across the bottom, they're not too bad either. They're bigger than the Lincoln Nautilus we were just in, which I really liked, but the climate control buttons are always present, but they were much tinier across the bottom. These are always present on screen, and they are much easier to touch because they're larger. And then you can have some favorites up here. So I like that from behind the wheel perspective, because when you're driving, you don't have as much of that like hunting, you know, trying to hit things on screen. It just makes it a better, like more pleasant experience interacting with the car from behind the wheel. My only complaint about gauge clusters when you're tall, though, is with the screen gauge cluster when you're tall, I look through a smaller area because it's a flat up and down screen and I'm looking at it diagonally, but like that's, you know, that's a me problem. I'm almost 6'6", so turn on sport mode just to see what the responsiveness is like, because we are on a kind of more twisty back road. Not that this thing is, you know, crazy responsive. It's a 3-row family SUV, and it does not have adjustable dampers. Like, the dampers are what they are. But I was just wondering if it would tighten things up, especially with the throttle pedal, the steering. Steering definitely feels a little heavier, although it's not as heavy off center. I think it should probably be a little bit more progressive off center. Yeah, it's still too dead on center in sport mode, so that could probably be tightened up. I like the wheel though. I like the big thick steering wheel from a, you know, aesthetic and from a practical standpoint. But this being sport mode and having this much kind of on-center play, no, I would just leave it in regular mode, honestly. I don't feel like sport mode's really adding much to the experience, but you know, this is the Z71 model, so oh well. When we get a chance, I'll open up the Turbo 4 a little bit. I know some people express concern that you're replacing the kind of larger displacement V6 with the Turbo 4, which I believe is a 2.5 liter. So, but really, there's no difference. I mean, honestly, there's no difference. Like from behind the wheel, personally, I don't think that there's a huge difference between the way this feels from behind the wheel and the way you'd feel behind the old V6. I mean, if anything, the increased torque output coming on lower, this thing feels a little peppier in slower speed driving than the V6 could manage. It is very nice having Google Maps embedded here. I've been on a lot of drive events where you're kind of following a paper copy on your own Google Maps, and these are all pre-programmed into the car. Let's punch it here.
Continue on Woodruff Road for 3/4 of a mile.
Okay, so we get a little bit more of that engine rasp. Not particularly pleasant sounding, but that's all right. This is a family SUV. It's not trying to be a sports car. And it's fast enough to get out of its own way. I don't think it's particularly quick when you put your foot into it, but it's definitely fast enough. On these kind of like country roads, I know that on video it might not translate fully, the sort of pavement imperfections and stuff, but the consistency of the body control and motions is easily the thing that impresses me the most. I mean, easily, not even close. That is the most impressive thing about this car. I think GM, more than a lot of companies, really nails the ride handling balance for its vehicles.
Take the next left onto Campbellton Red Wine Road.
If you go back and look at our review of like the Chevy Trax, for example, I mean, the Chevy Trax is just a small family crossover, the kind of thing you'd buy a new driver or whatever. And the ride handling balance in the Chevy Trax is great. It's great for what it is. It's exactly what it should be. And that's kind of how I feel about this.
Continue
the ride handling balance.
Red Wine Road for 3 miles.
It's exactly what it should be. It's compliant. It feels soft, but it doesn't lose control. And the body is able to keep itself in check. And in a vehicle of this size, it's just so nice to have. It's just so nice to have something that doesn't feel like it's constantly like wallowing about, just tracks straight, and the body tracks like very smooth. And I think it just makes driving like this, like we road trip all the time. I think Megan would really like this. She's not here, by the way, because she had to work, you know, when we both are like, you know, working at school, like we can't both take off days all the time. And so like if she were here, I think she would really appreciate it. She would really appreciate the way that this thing feels from behind the wheel. Now, how she would rate this against Kia Telluride, Hyundai Palisade, Honda Pilot, and I don't know. I think this is one of the better ride handling balances. I don't want to say it's the best, but it would definitely be up there from behind the wheel in this class of vehicles. If this isn't the best, it is darn close. I think you also have to shout out the isolation from some of the road texture and stuff like that. That is another thing that's sort of sticking out to me. We're on one of those roads that has a lot of the little repavement lines, you know, where the road is kind of cracked and they've come through with the tar and the asphalt, and they've like kind of patched up the cracks, like, you know, the kind of thing they do before they repave the road. And the isolation from the surface of the road that's being translated into the cabin of the Traverse, I feel very like isolated from that. There's a little bit of noise. There's a little bit more kind of road noise and wind noise than you might get in some competitors. I can't state that, like, you know, objectively, because I don't have any kind of sound equipment or something.
Turn right onto South Fulton Parkway.
But I do think that the isolation from the actual surface of the road is impressive. even if the window, even if you're not like kind of isolated from the outside, right? Like, I don't know if it has active noise cancellation. I would guess no, just by the amount of wind noise that you're hearing around the vehicle. That also could be a function of the new Traverse's cooler styling, because this is a much better looking Chevy Traverse. I mean, I don't think it's like a stretch to say that this is the best looking Chevy Traverse. I don't think the previous ones look super good. They mentioned in the Powertrain presentation that the auto start stop was smoothed out by some of the improvements they made to the engine, and right back there came to a stop on the highway. The engine cut off, and when it cut back on, it was almost imperceptible. There was an impressive amount of isolation from the event of the engine cutting on and off. And I know we live in a world now where sort of auto start stop systems and fuel economy and emissions are important, and so these kind of things are being baked into cars. It just is what it is. It's the way that it is. And I appreciate the fact that something that you are likely to have on a new vehicle, and that's likely to be a part of your vehicle, works so flawlessly and so smoothly.
So as you can probably tell by my magical change of shirt, I'm in the Chevy Traverse RS. So currently, this is the top of the line Chevy Traverse that will be offered. I asked the Chevy people, will there be a high country? To which they replied, the RS is the top of the line for now. So let's take that as a probably. There probably will be a high country version. But if you want the ultimate Chevy Traverse, this is the ultimate Chevy Traverse right now. And it's tuned to be a little bit more sporty. So is it? Well, kinda. Had the Z71 yesterday, so this is a pretty direct comparison. This one has the same ZF dampers tuned for a more sporty ride. Honestly, the body control is still fantastic. If it's smoother from already being smooth. So right now, to say that one is noticeably smoother than the other, I think is kind of academic. This one, firmer isn't the right word. I would say it just returns to position maybe like 30% faster when you go over a dip or a bump. So that's pretty great, pretty impressive, honestly. And the only like kind of noticeable difference in, I would say, road texture is probably coming from the 22-inch wheels, because the RS is riding on the 22-inch wheels. This is the red one with black wheels, and so I'm feeling like, you know, some kind of texture from the road. That's probably because it's on large wheels with thinner sidewall tires, not necessarily any difference in the actual ride and handling. Now, I think the steering, and this is just my perception from yesterday, I think the steering feels a little bit more sensitive off center, which I kind of like, because I complained in the Z71 that the sport mode didn't really seem to do a whole lot. And this one is in regular mode, and the steering seems to be a little bit more responsive off centers. I would say that's really one of the primary differences between the two trims. So if you prefer the styling or capability of the Z71 over the RS or vice versa, I'm not 100% sure that the ride handling is gonna be like a sticking point, because it's pretty great at both. So we're kind of on this little 2-lane right now that's meant, I think, to be somewhat of a handling road. If you watch our channel, you know that we have some roads around our house that we use for this purpose. Lots of kind of dips and curves. Obviously, it's a much longer route than what we have. And of course, you know, as I turn on the camera, I get stuck behind a Subaru going 20 miles an hour. But interestingly, what jumps out at me right away, I took some of these corners in sort of a, you know, intentionally aggressive fashion, just to kind of see if the good body control of the Chevy Traverse is coming at the expense of something else. And it's not. The sort of roll, the body roll and lean is like kind of weirdly well controlled. I was not expecting that. Some of these curves on this road are, you know, fairly aggressive. It's just a little Georgia 2-lane back road. And I was really kind of surprised that when I was
intentionally trying to provoke it to kind of lean and feel like, you know, pushing that understeer on this large kind of front wheel drive based platform. And it wasn't really doing it. I would say in this sort of hustling mode right now, where you're kind of like pushing it more than most people would ever push a 3-row crossover. This is not something that normal human beings would do. I would say the biggest thing that I'm noticing as a negative is the steering is quicker in the RS, but it doesn't have a lot of feel, and I feel like maybe it should actually be a hair quicker still, just to provide a little bit more confidence, because this thing is so capable, surprisingly capable. But that capability, like right here, this is a hard left-hander on the back road, and we kind of push in. The body is great. It's just sort of that numbness and the fact that you have to turn the wheel quite a bit to get sort of enough of a turn there, you know, for a sharpish kind of like left-hander or right-hander or whatever. Like that, and that's a minor complaint, honestly, because this is still impressive. Like most vehicles in this class are not going to be doing this, and most people would never do this in them. So it's a minor complaint. I just think that this is more confidence inspiring in this environment than I was expecting it to be. And I think if the steering was a little quicker off center with a little tighter ratio, it would actually be shockingly capable, because this is such a large crossover. That dip back there going across that bridge, man, that is an impressive level of body control, because this part of the road right now is kind of a mess. There's a hard right-hander here. Let's kind of throw this in and see what happens. Kind of decreasing radius. I mean, that's goofy. That's goofy that this thing is just zipping through here. Honestly, like the grip on a 3-row crossover is not the problem. It's just my impression of the steering feel. Another thing that is a positive, which not this red pickup truck pulling out in front of me is not a positive. So another confidence inspiring thing is the brakes, which is sort of funny because I'm, you know, complaining a little bit about the steering, but the brake pedal is nice and firm. Like, it's nice and firm, has a good bite when you step on it. And that was true in the Z71 as well. So this RS model, hopefully you can still see me as we go through this tree tunnel here. You never know what you're gonna get out here. We're southwest of Atlanta, kind of in the boonies, and definitely a countryish environment. But the brake pedal being what it is, the ride and handling balance being what it is, and just the general satisfaction, I would say, of the way this thing feels from behind the wheel. You know, really my only sort of knock is the steering. Everything else is really well controlled and dialed in.
All right, so obviously I told you that there were 2 positives that this thing was best in class on. The first, obviously, was the ride and handling balance. This is the best in class ride and handling in the 3-row crossover segment. The other is interior space. So this and the Grand Highlander are kind of neck and neck when it comes to interior space. I believe that the Traverse has a slight edge in some ways. Maybe the Grand Highlander is kind of up there in others, but overall, I think the win has to go to the Chevy Traverse, okay? So for context, if you're new here, I am almost 6'6". I'm about 6'5½". This has the panoramic sunroof because it's a fully loaded Chevy Traverse RS. And as you can see, I have plenty of space in my driving position. I have the memory seat set to my driving position. Now, this is fully loaded. We're going to get to this in a second because there's a little bit of a ding here on that regard. The seat does not motor forward and back. I personally don't care all that much about it, but some people kind of like that pomp and circumstance in their fully loaded vehicle. This thing, if you option it all the way up, is going to be getting probably uncomfortably close to $60,000. So you're looking at a little bit of a price premium over a comparable like Palisade Calligraphy and Kia Telluride X Pro and stuff like that. Is it worth it? I think it depends on what matters to you as a consumer. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the interior features in here, and then you would have to decide, what do I want in my vehicle? Do I want a little bit more style and pomp and circumstance in the design, or do I want a little bit more of the everyday usability and tech features? I think Chevy's kind of going in that route, for better or worse, and then brands like Kia and Hyundai are going in the other route, for better or worse, where they're trying to kind of give you more of that, I don't want to say fake luxury vibe, but they want you to feel like you're getting more of a luxury car for like a normal price. So let's talk about this for a second. You get an 11-inch gauge cluster and a 17.7-inch infotainment display. It is positively gigantic, okay? And I'll show you some of the B-roll, and you saw some of it in the driving portion, but that is an expansive amount of screens, and they work really well. This one being fully loaded has heated and cooled seats. You get redundant controls for your main climate stuff, so your sort of AC controls, your temperature controls, and stuff like that. Absolutely love that. Love that you have the redundancy of the controls on both the screen and down here. Makes it super easy for the driver. This one has SuperCruise. You saw in the driving portion, we tested SuperCruise. I had not previously tested SuperCruise, and I will confidently say that I would not blame you or me or anyone else for making a buying decision based on SuperCruise, okay? We do a lot of road trips between family vacations and Hallie's volleyball commitments and now Ella going to college. We do a lot of road trips, and having SuperCruise makes me think that I would seriously consider buying a vehicle because it was equipped with SuperCruise. It worked so well. I was very impressed on my first time with it. I just had the Lincoln Nautilus recently that had Blue Cruise. SuperCruise is superior in every way. It just is, okay? And I really like the Nautilus. Go check out that review if you haven't seen it yet, or if it's not posted yet, or if it's 20 years in the future yet, I don't even know. But like, this is a superior system as of right now in end of April, beginning of May of 2024. Like, SuperCruise is the best mainstream system there, period, okay?
Hey, breaking in real quick here, word on SuperCruise, because two things just happened, and of course I wasn't rolling camera at the time, but I wanted to point them out because they involve SuperCruise, which is a big selling feature on the new Chevy Traverse, because you can get it in the Z71 and in this fully loaded RS trim. So, I'm currently on a little 2-lane road. It's a highway marked, but it's a little 2-lane road in Georgia. And SuperCruise has been active or giving me the option to activate it this whole time. In fact, right now, I activate it right there. It's 61 miles an hour and we're good to go. Like, it's tracking the car in front of me. We're on this 2-lane road. The only time it will cut off, and it gives me the audible, or well, not audible, the physical warning through the seat, is when the state of the road gets so bad that it can't like track the road anymore. So that's not really a SuperCruise thing. So that's impressive. I wanted to share that because these types of roads out here, you know, I live in Atlanta, so like when we go to Disney or we go to the beach, you know, if the traffic on the interstates is really bad, which it often is, we take the back roads. Like Google Maps just routes us to these back road highways all the time. I mean, 99% of the time, we spend half or more of the journey to the beach and to Disney World on roads like this in rural Georgia, Alabama, you know, South Carolina, Florida. So having SuperCruise be available for something like this is phenomenal. The other thing that happened, and I'll try to recreate this, and if I do, I'll cut to that after, is I was on a highway. I had SuperCruise on. I was approaching an on-ramp. SuperCruise sensed the cars coming down the on-ramp, knew that we were by an on-ramp, knew that the car to the left of me was back a little bit, changed lanes over to allow the cars to merge, and then changed lanes back after we had passed them and the on-ramp. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, that's awesome. That's super cool that like it did that. I didn't even really know or activate anything. It just like gave me a little butt cushion warning, and I saw in the driver, the gauge cluster, like that it was showing me where it was and what the cars were doing, and then it just did it, and then it gave me the vibration on my left and right butt cheek to tell me like it was changing back in the other direction. So it was like, we're going left butt cheek, we're going right butt cheek, and I was like, that's super cool. SuperCruise. Ha ha ha. Currently on a little 2-lane Georgia road, you can see here, and SuperCruise was navigating us down this 2-lane road with no problems. SuperCruise is enabled for this road. Now it just turned off because when I blocked my face with the phone, it's saying we can't see your face, but you can see that the SuperCruise little steering wheel symbol is actually down there in the corner saying I can turn it back on if I want to, which is just incredible, actually.
So you have all that kind of stuff. You get some storage here. The gear selector is up here now, so it opens up a little bit more storage. You have power, everything in the seat. Seats are pretty comfortable, by the way. Negatives. I don't think the interior materials in here are as nice as they are in some of the competitors. You've got some piano black here. It just feels kind of chintzy. They're not bad. I just think that like some of this, like the RS trim here, it looks cool, but it is just kind of plasticky. And then the center console, you know, is kind of average. I think that's, in my opinion, the biggest drawback. I'm not a huge, like, crazy interior guy, but I know Megan is, and I know for this price, where you're exceeding the price of the Koreans and you're getting dangerously close to the price of the Mazda CX-90, which has a gorgeous and sumptuous interior, I think the interior ambiance is a little lacking, but the technology kind of makes up for it. The Google integration and stuff like that, it works so well. I've been on some of these press drives now, and they program in those waypoints, and having it all in the infotainment system and having it display in front of you in the driver information area in the gauge cluster, it's really nice. This is the only car that I've driven where I would probably consider, and maybe the Nautilus, because there are more cars starting to integrate the Google Maps into the car, where I would consider using the Google Maps in the car more so than I would in my phone through CarPlay or something. This one has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. I don't know if GM's walking that whole no CarPlay thing back, but this one still has it. So that's nice as well. But from a space standpoint, this is great. And on that note of space standpoint, let's look at me, almost 6'6", sitting behind me, and then also look at the back in the cargo area. I think you're gonna wanna see how much you can pack into this thing, because it's frankly incredible. And I think that is the other main reason you'd want to get a Chevy Traverse. I know, I just magically switched sides of the car, and there's a really practical filming reason why. It's about 11 in the morning, and the sun just peeked above these trees in this little rural area that I'm in, and it just bathed that side in extremely terrible light, so I had to switch sides. But you can see here, the passenger seat is set equal to where my driver's seat was set, and I am sitting in the second row. I put it all the way back, and I have inches of space between my knees. I've got plenty of headroom. I've got a vent right here. Again, almost 6'6", and I can comfortably sit all the way back. Now, my head is right at the sort of headliner, but it's not touching. I mean, I can feel my hairs touching, but it's not touching. And so I can sit back, I can recline the seat if I want. So relaxing. And I've got all the space in the world. So I've got tons of space in this thing. So you could literally fit 4 of me right here in the front 2 seats in the second row and have plenty of room. Now I know what you're thinking. Can I fit in the back seat? Well, no, okay? But I'm 6.5 feet tall. Like, why would you be putting 6.5 feet tall in the third row of the Chevy Traverse? Now, if you had a normal sized person here and you scooted this seat up, you could actually fit an adult human behind an adult human. Maybe not one my size, but you could. But what I think is more important for our family of 4 is that in this very reasonably still sized SUV, the amount of cargo you can carry in this thing if you fold that third row down. Let's go take a look at that. Okay, so here you can see the cargo space in the Chevy Traverse, and I'm sorry for the mixed lighting, but this is the third row up. You have 23 cubic feet of space behind the third row, which that's about as much as you can get in a 3-row crossover. But here's the thing, in the fully loaded RS model, I can drop the seats. Let me make sure I do the right button. I think it's this one. Let's try that. Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna drop the seats here and here. Now the manual is just the strap and it works perfectly fine, but you can drop the seats and that opens it up to like 57 cubic feet of cargo space. And if you fold everything down, you have 98 cubic feet of cargo space. That is an enormous amount of cargo space in a vehicle of this size. And you can see with those seats folded down, I know it's hard, like I said, with the mixed lighting, but if I come in here and sit here like this, oop, don't hit my head there, the opening isn't super tall, but I can practically lay down in the car. I mean, my legs would be sticking out, but I have tons of space. I mean, this thing is massive inside. So you can fold those down. You can also slide the second row forward. And then if you have a baby seat in the second row, you can tilt it forward for access. There's a button there as well. I didn't show that because we don't have babies anymore on our channel. We have teenagers. So, you know, check out a younger family like the Car Mom or somebody for that. So this thing has a huge amount of versatility baked into the cargo area. And if you're trying to, especially in this economy, get a useful useful family vehicle without spending full-size SUV money. I mean, you're talking Tahoe and Suburban money, which is just crazy these days. This thing gives you about as much interior space as the Chevy Tahoe in a more usable and, let's be honest, frankly better driving crossover package. So I just love the capability of this thing. The fact that it's not that large of a vehicle, but yet you have so much space in it. And because you could fold the rows separately and you got the captain's chairs and things like that, there's been plenty of times when we've had to take the girls on vacation and they bring a friend or something. We fold part of the rows down and we leave part of them up and we stack the side, with luggage and stuff like that. So this thing has now become, in my opinion, the sort of best in class family hauler. And so those are the two areas that this thing is kind of a champion, is in the ride and handling balance and in just the versatility and cargo space you have available to you. There's one other area though about this that's very impressive. And let's talk about that for just a second, because when the Chevy reps were telling us about it, as the dad of a driver and a soon-to-be driver, I was very interested. So Chevy has done something cool here when it comes to safety features. I was talking to the safety engineer and she stressed, having kids around the same age as mine, that safety was such a priority and they wanted to stop gatekeeping safety features. So not only is the new Chevy Traverse equipped with tons and tons of standard safety features, they're all standard. That's the thing. That's the key word there. They're all standard safety features. Things like the surround view camera are now standard. All of the rear cross traffic, rear pedestrian. They even have bicycle detection now. So like instead of just blind spot monitoring, they have bicycle detection. And the Chevy Traverse will gently steer you away from the danger. They're trying to take these sort of passive safety features and make them slightly more active safety features. And not only that, but they're equipping the Chevy Traverse and future Chevy models, and probably proliferating across the GM portfolio, they're adding it all in as just straight up standard. So even if you get an extremely kind of lower trim, LS or, a base LT or something like that, you're going to get pretty much everything standard. I even questioned them. I saw the surround view, the HD surround view camera. I said, hold up, you're telling me that a base level Chevy Traverse will just have a surround view camera standard? And she was like, yeah, because it's better, it's safer. And I really like that. I really appreciate that. It has always bothered me a little bit that a number of automakers gatekeep some safety features behind option and trim packages. I feel like that tying safety features to more electronics or luxurious features and things like that, it doesn't really make sense to me. It's not a big vote of consumer confidence when it's like, we could have made the car safer, but we didn't. And I'm not blaming anybody for that, because I think it's something that just sort of naturally evolved over time. But I appreciate the fact that Chevy is sort of not only including this stuff, but they're kind of bragging about it, because what that'll do is it'll promote other automakers to do the same. And then we'll get safer vehicles. And they showed us some NHTSA traffic crash data and fatality data, and they showed us the impact that some of these features can have on traffic fatalities and accidents. And the data doesn't lie. I mean, when you pack in more of these safety features, from the passive to the active ones, to just the monitoring ones, having more views and more sensors and things like that, the data doesn't lie. Cars are safer. Fatalities do decrease. Accidents do decrease. If accidents decrease, insurance costs go down. Fatalities decrease, cars are safer for families, and you buy them for your first teen driver and stuff like that. And I was thinking about the requirements when we were looking at a car when Ella started driving, and I thought about how the safety features were important to us, that Megan and I were like, we wanted to have as many standard safety features as possible. And she has a 2019 RAV4, and it was extremely well equipped, and it's a base model, it's just a straight base model. And I thought, it's kind of wild that in just a couple years, like 5 years down the road, we're now at a place where so many more standard safety features are being included, and I really like that. Let's hope we see more of it. All right, well, now the sun is fully coming through the trees. We're getting into midday now, so that is my Mother Nature signal that we need to wrap this preview up. So I hope you enjoyed this first drive of the Chevy Traverse. And I'm gonna end with my usual question. Should you buy the new Chevy Traverse? And I think that depends a lot on what you prioritize as a consumer. Does the Chevy Traverse look infinitely better than it did in the past? Absolutely. This new Chevy Traverse looks phenomenal. Whether you go with this beautiful candy red RS trim or you want to get the more kind of rugged looking Z71 trim. I really like that Z71 trim. I think it looks fantastic, but I also think this with its black 22-inch wheels, very good looking vehicle. So the looks I think would help to sell you. The interior features and technology, SuperCruise is a massive bonus. The Z71 package having actual off-road functionality, don't get crazy, don't get it twisted. It's not an off-road vehicle. We're not talking about a TRD Pro here. We're talking about a 3-row family crossover that can handle itself reasonably well off the beaten path. And I think I showed you guys that. So let me know if you would be interested in that in the comments. I think that that kind of soft roader getting a little tougher segment is going to continue to increase. We've seen it with the Pathfinder Rock Creek. We've seen it with the new Santa Fe XRT. And now we're seeing it with the Traverse Z71. So look for that segment to continue to grow and continue to get more competitive, right? Powertrain, fuel economy numbers, I mentioned in the drive portion, kind of low 20s across the board in average driving, but it goes up to the mid to high 20s in the front wheel drive only model. So that's pretty good for this class of vehicle. The only sort of negative of that powertrain is the engine note. It's torquey, it's responsive, it drives reasonably well. The body control and composure is best in class, so you have that. The space cargo carrying capability is best in class. Interior materials, leave a little bit to be desired, but I think you need to decide what priorities matter to you. I think at the end of the day, if you want something that makes you feel like you're buying a more luxurious vehicle, the Korean twins and some of the other options might still have an edge, but if you need versatility, you like to road trip, and, well, you know, a healthy dose of exterior style, the Chevy Traverse might be for you. In my opinion, overall, if the Chevy Traverse isn't now at the top of this class of vehicles, it's close. I would say the Traverse would be up there, kind of neck and neck with maybe the Kia Telluride and Hyundai Palisade, and you have to decide on your priorities. The Pilot as well and the Toyota Grand Highlander would also be up there. I think this versus the Grand Highlander, this has the edge because of the way it drives and SuperCruise. So if you're looking for maximum space and you're looking at this versus the Grand Highlander, you might be happier with this. It just depends. Also, I think the Grand Highlander looks like a giant RAV4 and that's kind of boring. So let me know in the comments, does the new Chevy Traverse appeal to you? If so, why? But if not, why? Megan and I are actually curious. I can't wait to get her behind the wheel of this vehicle, to get her strongly worded opinions, as they always are. So stick around until then. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell and all those good things. And also don't forget to follow us on our other social media channels where we do a lot of, quick hot takes on vehicles over on TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. So let me know what you think. I'd love to hear it. I'll see you soon and, drive safe and all that. That's how I used to end these videos. So we'll end there. Drive safe.
Are you kidding me right now? You're just gonna stop in the middle of the road with no turn signal? Freaking Audi driver. Georgia back roads, try not to get splatted pulling out here.
A very large creature somewhere in those woods. Don't worry, there's no bears in this part of Georgia. We're south of the city, but it still made me go, what is that?